I've played every game in the Metal Gear series. Some I've played for hundreds of hours, others were worth abandoning after one or two. The following is my ranking of every game in the Metal Gear series. Dead last in 19th place is Metal Gear Survive, a pointless cash grab that sullies Kojima's legacy. Metal Gear Survive is a thankfully non-canon abomination of a game. It basically takes the assets from MGS5 and creates some sort of zombie-based defense game. This game came out after Hideo Kojima had left the company and was clearly a cheap attempt at cashing in on the popularity of MGS5 and all the assets that came from it. I don't entirely blame Konami for making this game, but the result is a bad plot and a game made up of nothing tangible, just stuck together parts. It's all a bit pointless. In 18th place is Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops Plus. A bit pointless, doesn't really bring anything new. Portable Ops Plus is barely even a game in its own right. The main function of it was to provide multiplayer functionality to Portable Ops, as well as extra single player missions and characters. It adds nothing to the story, so it's a bit pointless really. In 17th place is Metal Gear Ghost Babel, an ambitious game that satisfies an MGS craving. I'd like to stress that every game moving forward from here is at least decent and worth a play. Ghost Babel is a surprisingly ambitious game. It was created for the Game Boy Color, so there were a lot of limitations. Yet they managed to put together something that works really well and plays a lot like MG2. The story is non-canon, but it's interesting nonetheless. It has all the classic Metal Gear things we've come to expect. Sneaking, shooting, cool boss fights, so it's a great wee game and worth picking up. In 16th place, Metal Gear. It might have started it all, but it's very frustrating. I actually think Ghost Babel is a better game, but ranked this higher purely for the fact that it was the start of what would become one of gaming's greatest franchises. It introduced us to the world of Solid Snake and Big Boss, the start of a legacy that has endured for decades. All that being said, it's not a great game, at least by any sort of modern standard. The story is short but interesting, but it's the gameplay where it sorely lacks. The vast Outer Heaven fortress is very confusing, and it's really easy to get lost with no sort of map or guidance. Then you've got the fact that there are loads of key cards and they all look the same. You've got to manually find the right one in your menu to use it on a door, which gives no indication of which one you need. The game does have some great ideas in it though, but there's just too much frustration to be that enjoyable. In 15th place is Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater 3D, an inferior version of a masterpiece. MGS3 is a truly outstanding game, but I'll talk about it more further on. Snake Eater 3D just isn't anywhere near as good as playing the original or HD remaster. They had a good go at trying to make the controls work, but they just don't quite do the job. Other than adding a few interesting features that make use of the 3DS's 3D and camera features, it doesn't improve on the original game at all. If anything, it's just a bit more frustrating to play. Plus, if you're not playing MGS3 on a huge widescreen, it just loses that jaw-dropping blockbuster effect that makes the game so amazing. In 14th place is Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes, yet another inferior version of a masterpiece. In theory, the idea behind making the Twin Snakes is a good one. Take a fantastic game and upgrade it in line with its technically superior sequel by adding graphical improvements, better sound quality, and new gameplay features. In practice, it ruins the game. All the subtle style of the original game is replaced with a lot of John Woo style nonsense, i.e. Snake back flipping off a missile, turning the game into a ludicrous, comical farce. The original voice acting has been re-recorded, which is a mixed bag. It's very obvious that some of the actors just did it for a paycheck and have clearly phoned it in. And then the new gameplay is implemented terribly. They add features such as first-person aiming without changing any of the boss fights to take this feature into account, so you can literally just stand there and shoot a bunch of the bosses without having to move. Overall, if you love Metal Gear Solid, it's worth playing just to see how silly it is. For me, this was really hard not to rank last because I hate it, simply for what it represents. However, there is a game in there and it's worthy of conversation. In 13th place is Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops, a great squad-based game with a cast of familiar characters. MPO was created for the PSP by a separate team while Hideo Kojima was working on MGS4, so its canonicity is a bit in question. Canon or not, the story is very engaging and includes a cast of characters that you'll be familiar with from previous games. Namely, it includes the origins of both Grey Fox and Colonel Campbell. All the cutscenes are presented in a comic book style, which looks really cool. The gameplay is mission based. You select 4 squad members who you can switch about during missions. While going about your business, you can recruit new members and build up your squad. It's a fun game with a great story that sets a good foundation for Peace Walker, which would vastly improve the concepts explored here. In 12th place is Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. More like an extended demo, but set the imagination racing. You could easily pair this with the Phantom Pain and no one would blame you. The story is very short, but it's introduced us to what was going to be possible when the full game came out. Still, it's an important part of the story, and with the additional missions, there's a decent chunk of content to get through. In 11th place is Metal Gear Acid. Unique mechanics and a dark story make for a great experience. This was the first time that the series seriously deviated from its roots. The game is a collectible card-based tactical RPG. I know, it's a mouthful, but what you end up with is so much fun. It plays a bit like a tactical RPG like Fire Emblem, but all your commands are given using a deck of cards, a bit like Magic the Gathering. Combined with the usual MGS tropes such as sneaking and sniping, it creates a one-of-a-kind experience I haven't had since. Well, except of course when Acid 2 came out. The story is dark and features a cast of wacky enemies and 2 playable characters. It combines one of my favourite genres of games with one of my favourite series, and for that, I love it. In 10th place is Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. The ultimate hack and slash makes Raiden the badass he should have been. Raiden's tragic part in the Metal Gear series is an important one. He's the classic tragic hero, haunted by his past and doomed to repeat his mistakes. His role doesn't change in Rising, but it gets wrapped in some of the most kick-ass sword-fighting action in video games. Slowing down time so you can strategically cut your enemies in half and rip out their spine is gory, but damn good fun. The story is interesting. It features mostly a new cast of characters, some really cool enemies, and focuses around Raiden's mission to take down a rogue private military company. Sadly, hopes for a sequel are pretty much gone since Kojima left Konami, but one can dream. In 9th place is Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. Takes the idea of its predecessor and cranks it up to 11. As I mentioned earlier, Metal Gear was a good idea that was executed poorly. This sequel took the very basic concepts of its forebear and tweaked and refined them. New mechanics were added to both the enemies and the player character, and the area of Zanzibar land is more varied and more detailed. The story was fully fleshed out for this one, and the calls with Snake's allies are more meaningful and more useful. It's an improvement in every single way. It pretty much set the standard for the whole series going forward, and still holds up to this day as an engaging 2D stealth thriller. In 8th place is Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. The possibilities are endless in this tragic, open-world adventure. The Phantom Pain picks up where Ground Zeroes left off, with Snake in the hospital looking to break out and get revenge. The story is one of horrible people doing horrible things due to their own selfish motivations. It explores a lot of dark themes and elicits a lot of introspection, much like many games in the series. The gameplay is incredibly expansive. It takes the base and squad building elements from Peace Walker, ramps them up, and combines them with a huge open world set across several countries. As you go, you can unlock an almost unlimited number of weapons and gadgets, meaning you can approach each situation in a million different ways. You also get several companions who can assist you in battle, or indeed in sneaking, adding a further layer to the action. I have a few gripes about the game though. The story has a few open-ended story points that were never properly resolved, which is quite frustrating, but my biggest gripe is how much time you spend going to and from the helicopter. After a while, it really feels like it slows the game down way too much. Despite these issues, it's still a phenomenal game with a ton to do. Well worth the price of admission. In 7th place is Metal Gear Acid 2. Refines the unique mechanics of Acid and adds a bit of cool. The mechanics of the first Acid game were a unique and fun new way to play. The sequel takes those mechanics and refines them, removing a lot of the small niggles, then completely changes the graphical style. The new cel-shaded graphics are stylish and beautiful. It plays much like the first game, but with new modes. The story, similarly to the first, follows a sort of parallel Solid Snake universe. It's a shame we haven't had any more sequels, because this was better than the first one in every single way. In 6th place is Metal Gear Solid VR Missions. Realises the potential of all of Metal Gear Solid's mechanics in a fun and interesting way. Known as special missions in some regions, MGS VR Missions introduces 300 levels of pure MGS action. No story, just Snake. The original game had a lot of cool weapons and mechanics that don't really get utilised a lot. VR Missions takes all these things and gives you missions that explore the potential of them. There are a massive selection of missions for every weapon, multiple sneaking missions, and even some fun Sherlock Holmes style mystery missions. You can even unlock some special missions where you get to play as Grey Fox. Overall, it's an amazingly fun addition to Metal Gear Solid, with plenty to do. In 5th place is Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. A gripping story and phenomenal cinematics creates the ultimate Metal Gear experience. MGS2 ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, and MGS3 was a prequel, so MGS4 was always inevitable. You take on the role of Solid Snake on what might be his final mission. You have to sneak, shoot, and figure your way through several places across the globe, including a revisit to Shadow Moses from MGS1. All the old favourites make an appearance, and the story wraps up the whole series in a neat little bow, leaving no stone unturned. Unfortunately, this means that some of the cutscenes are very long, which won't be for everyone. However, if you're invested in the MGS story and its lore, you'll find it all absolutely fascinating. The gameplay offers some new mechanics compared to previous games in the series. Since you're trying to sneak through an active battlefield, you can actually influence how the battles go, and depending on your actions, you can antagonise or befriend the rebels. This can open up new avenues for you, or create bigger problems, meaning there are multiple ways to make your way through the vast open areas. I wouldn't recommend this as a first MGS game to play, as it's best played with the knowledge of the first 3 game stories. However, if you have played the first 3, this acts as a rewarding end to an incredible series. Honestly, if Hideo Kojima had stopped here, I wouldn't have even been disappointed. In 4th place is Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, the ultimate squad-based action game that oozes with MGS charm. Peace Walker was released towards the end of the PSP's run, so it didn't sell as well as its predecessors, but sales aren't everything, and this game is yet another Hideo Kojima masterpiece that is brilliant for so many reasons. The squad gameplay is fantastic. By using the Fulton recovery system, you can recruit new soldiers to your mother base, all of whom come with a variety of stats and abilities. By cleverly assigning them to your various departments, it's possible to unlock schemas for building new weapons and accessories. The amount of these you can build is incredible, giving you a million different ways to approach your missions. And speaking of missions, there are loads. You've got your main ops, which help to advance the story, and the extra ops for more tricky challenges and better rewards. The story has all the intrigue and excitement to be expected of a Hideo Kojima narrative, and the cutscenes are presented in a beautiful 2D comic style similar to Portable Ops. The lore is deepened by the various Sony Walkman tapes you can uncover, which help to expand the background of all the characters. Overall, it's an absolutely fantastic game with hours upon hours of content. The PSP version is great, but the game was perfected with the HD version, which is the one I'd recommend playing. And now we reach the top 3. In 3rd place is Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, an incredible spy thriller filled with fascinating characters, epic boss fights, and a soundtrack to rival Hollywood's best. Snake Eater's place in gaming history is an exalted one, strengthened by the fact that they've recently decided to remake the game with stunning modern graphics, new music, and new mechanics. The story opens with the first ever Halo jump as a mystery man dives from an aircraft, parachuting into the forests of 1960s Russia. He unmasked to reveal Solid Snake, or rather, the man from whom our usual hero was cloned, the man who would one day become Big Boss. As the story unfolds, we learn about the man, the myth, the legend, as he walks the path to becoming the greatest hero of the 20th century. The story is deep and rich. Every character has their own motivations. Can anyone really be trusted? With every twist and turn, new betrayals reveal themselves until it all ends in an epic climax, culminating in one of the most heart-wrenching moments in gaming history. The gameplay takes the usual MGS tactical espionage action and brings it to the forest. Sneak your way through the forest terrain, caves, and enemy bases, making use of the camouflage system so you can blend into your surroundings and become one with them. The forest is filled to the brim with edible plants and wildlife. There were no nanomachines in the 1960s, so Snake needs to catch and eat his own dinner. Make sure Snake keeps full, or his rumbling stomach might just attract attention. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater is one of the greatest games of all time. Its story is incredible, the gameplay is tense, and the characters are all unique. With the upcoming release of Delta, I expect it to be raised to a whole new level. What a thrill. In 2nd place is Metal Gear Solid. It set the world alight and gave us the first truly epic Hollywood experience in a video game. I can't stress enough just how much we were all blown away by Metal Gear Solid when it first arrived on the PlayStation in 1998. The hype was massive, with just about every gaming magazine offering multiple page spreads on all the incredible things this game was going to bring. When the demo became available with an issue of the official PlayStation magazine, I bought it on day one and played it over and over again. That opening cutscene still gives me chills. The game begins as Solid Snake arrives on Shadow Moses Island. His mission, to find out whether or not the terrorist group led by former members of Foxhound have the capability to launch a nuclear strike and stop them if they do. From the off, we find out that the terrorists are led by a man who's the exact duplicate of Snake. A brother he never knew he had, perhaps? The narrative is a deeply personal one, exploring each character's drives and beliefs. This is most perfectly personified by the character of Otacon, a vulnerable man who only ever wanted to use his intelligence to help mankind. But like a lot of us, his life never quite turned out the way he dreamed, and he ended up creating weapons of mass destruction. It's exciting and heart-wrenching. It asks a lot of questions of society and what it means to be a positive part in it, or indeed how we can even influence it given the powers that be. It's truly one of the great narratives of our time. Gameplay-wise, it's really a product of its time. By today's standards, it's probably a bit simple. However, I challenge anyone to try and find all the secrets hidden within the game. The boss fights are something never really seen in games before. Each has unique mechanics and methods required to beat them. In a lot of ways, it's not just an action/stealth game, it's a puzzle game too. It's an incredible amount of fun discovering all the different weapons and items and figuring out the best ways to utilise them. In many respects, MGS3 is a better game and could easily take second place. However, the original Metal Gear Solid paved the way. It showed everyone that games aren't just immature sources of amusement, but they can be art. Art to rival even the greatest blockbuster movies. For that, the gaming community owes Metal Gear Solid all its respect. With that, I leave you with one question. Do you think love can bloom, even on a battlefield? And finally, the best game in the entire Metal Gear series is Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty, a cerebral and shocking genre-defining masterpiece dripping with blockbuster style. Anticipation for MGS2 was sky high ever since the first game dropped in 1998. Gamers could not wait for a sequel to Hideo Kojima's thrilling masterpiece. So much so that the game he directed in between, Zone of the Enders, sold incredibly well simply because it included a demo of MGS2. Luckily for me, Zoe is a great game, but I really just bought it for this demo, and this was just a small slice of the sheer brilliance I was soon to witness. The game opens in typical cinematic fashion as a hooded man crosses the George Washington Bridge on a rainy night in New York. All of a sudden he starts running and launches himself off the bridge, bungeeing onto the deck of a passing tanker. As his stealth technology fails, it reveals the man underneath, Solid Snake, the man we've all been waiting for, on a mission to investigate a brand new Metal Gear being transported aboard the vessel. Not content with keeping the players comfortable, however, after a few hours playing as Solid Snake, the perspective suddenly changes. The rest of the game sees you take control of the rookie Raiden. Set a few years later, Raiden is sent in by Snake's former commander to investigate the Big Shell facility. The President of the United States has been taken hostage by the terrorist sect Dead Cell, and it's Raiden's job to rescue him. But not all is as it seems. As Raiden infiltrates the facility, he teams up with Iroquois Pliskin, who we know as Solid Snake in disguise. We get to see Snake from a whole new viewpoint, from the outside looking in. And as the story unfolds, Raiden has to question everything, even his own reality. The narrative unfolds slowly, giving you subtle, easy-to-miss clues throughout to the true nature of the situation. Seriously, the level of detail included within the surroundings, the cutscenes, the codec calls, is unreal. And the whole thing culminates in an insane mind job that makes us question not just Raiden's reality, but our own. The insights into society and the future are shocking. Looking back now, it's amazing to see just how much Hideo Kojima got right, as more and more of the future he predicted feels like it's coming true. I could sit and talk about it for hours, but there are far smarter people than me who have broken this game down and analysed it. But I'd suggest playing the game a couple of times at least before you start looking into it. The gameplay builds on what we had with Metal Gear Solid. We can now shoot in first person view, hide in lockers, shoot out enemy radios, among other improvements. Each new boss in the game represents another unique challenge. As well as a typical gallery of psychopathic freaks, you also have to take on up to 20 Metal Gears at once on the hardest difficulties. Everything is tied together with a thrilling soundtrack from Hollywood composer Harry Gregson Williams. that elevated video games to a whole new level. I personally never get tired of playing this game. It's so full of detail, I'm still finding out new things about it all the time. Kojima must have known that switching the perspective to Raiden early on was really going to anger people, but it was a masterstroke that gave us one of the most interesting narratives of our time. Metal Gear Solid was a masterpiece, but Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty was outer heaven sent. And that's why it's the greatest game in the Metal Gear series and one of the greatest games of all time. Thanks for watching. What series would you like me to rank next? Leave your opinions in the comments and like and subscribe for more.